No one in Maple Ridge forgot the sound of a Colorado storm crawling in at dawn. How the wind found its way through broken fence posts. How the rain hissed as it battered warped barn roofs. How the whole world seemed to be holding its breath. It was the kind of morning when old secrets clawed their way to the surface. Officer Claire Mitchell parked her cruiser on the outskirts of the abandoned ranch, her headlights casting crooked shadows across the tangled weeds and rusted gates. She was 32, sharp-eyed and reserved, the kind of cop who carried her history in the way she walked, a little too quietly, a little too careful. Her partner, Hunter, a German shepherd with a soldier's posture and a scar above his brow, sat beside her, alert and silent until the radio crackled with dispatch's voice. Unit 4, report of suspicious noises, 1832 Willow Bend Road. Possible animal in distress. No other units in the area. Claire scanned the rain-smeared windows of the barn ahead, then looked at Hunter. "Ready, buddy?" she whispered, half for herself. Hunter wagged his tail once, but his ears were rigid, listening to something she couldn't hear. She grabbed her flashlight, zipped her jacket to the neck, and stepped out. The mud sucked at her boots, the rain sliding cold down her collar. Hunter moved ahead, his nose low, tail stiff, guiding her toward the barn's battered door. It creaked open on hinges that screamed with the wind. Inside, darkness pooled in every corner, the air thick with the smell of rot and wet hay. Claire swept her light across the crumbling stalls, searching for the source of the call, raccoons maybe, or a stray dog. But as her beam passed over the farthest corner, Hunter stopped dead, muscles coiled, every hair standing up. Then, without warning, Hunter let out a bark so fierce it echoed off the rafters, sharp and urgent. He refused to leave the shadows near the back wall, pacing, barking, then whining, eyes wide and fixed. Claire's heart hammered in her chest. She'd worked with Hunter for 5 years. Nothing spooked him. But now he looked back at her, fear shining in his brown eyes, a mirror of her own rising anxiety. "What is it?" she whispered, moving closer. The wind rattled the loose boards overhead. Hunter's nose pressed to the floor, paws scrabbling against warped planks, digging furiously at something unseen. Splinters flew. Claire crouched, shining her light on the ground. Muddy paw prints crossed the floorboards, some canine but others smaller. Human. A cold chill crawled up Claire's spine. She pressed the radio to her lips, voice low. "Dispatch, Unit 4. I need backup at Willow Bend. Possible evidence of—" She stopped. What exactly was she seeing? Her mind flashed to every horror story, every training video, every warning about what you might find in an old, forgotten place. Hunter whined again, then growled, pawing at a particular spot with frantic determination. Claire reached out, heart pounding, and pried at the edge of a loose board. It resisted, swollen by years of rain, but finally gave way with a groan. A wave of damp, sour air washed over her. Hunter shoved his nose into the gap, barking as if trying to warn her of something buried deep. Claire hesitated, torn. If she called for more help, there'd be questions, maybe even ridicule. Officer spooked by a barking dog on an empty ranch. She'd heard worse, but Hunter looked at her again, pleading, almost desperate. She had learned to trust that look more than her own instincts. Lightning flashed outside, thunder rolling over the hills. The barn shook. Claire made her choice. She pressed the radio again, steadier now. "This is Officer Mitchell. I need immediate backup. Bring tools. Possible discovery. Unknown situation." Rain hammered the roof, but in that moment, everything went silent. Hunter stood guard over the hole in the floor, trembling but resolute. Claire knelt beside him, bracing herself for whatever might come next. For a heartbeat, she imagined she heard something, scratching maybe, or the faintest sound of a whimper. She didn't know it yet, but her decision in that stormy dawn would change everything. For herself, for Hunter, and for the town that had almost forgotten how to hope. The storm hammered harder, rattling every pane of the abandoned ranch house as Claire's call for backup went out over the radio. In the hush that followed, time seemed to slow. Hunter paced beside the hole he'd uncovered, tail low but unwavering, every sense trained on what lay beneath. Claire shined her light into the darkness, her own hands shaking as she waited for the sound of sirens. Minutes felt like hours. At last, red and blue lights flickered through the rain-soaked morning, streaking the battered barn with color. 3 officers, Sergeant Ramirez, rookie Jamie Booker, and paramedic Emily Tran, arrived, each exchanging uncertain glances as Claire waved them over. "I don't know what's down there," Claire said, her voice barely above the wind. "But Hunter won't leave it alone." Ramirez, a gruff veteran with little patience for what he called animal theatrics, shrugged. "Let's get it over with." He grabbed a crowbar from the cruiser and joined Claire in kneeling by the damaged floor. Hunter growled softly, never taking his eyes off the crack. With a wrench and a grunt, Ramirez pried up the boards. The wood splintered, breaking open a dark cavity beneath the barn. The air that escaped was heavy, sour, suffocating, with the unmistakable tang of fear and something else, something almost primal. Claire recoiled, but forced herself to lean closer, shining her flashlight into the exposed pit. A faint, stifled sound drifted up, a whimper, soft as a secret. Then, suddenly, a small, dirt-caked hand reached up toward the light. "Oh my God!" Jamie gasped, dropping to her knees. Emily hurried forward, medical bag in hand, as Claire and Ramirez widened the gap, pulling free more boards until a cramped, makeshift cell was revealed. Inside, 4 children crouched together. The oldest, a girl barely in her teens with tangled hair and haunted eyes, pressed herself in front of the others. 2 boys and a smaller girl clung to her, all so thin their cheeks were hollow, their skin pale and bruised by the cold and the dark. Claire's heart leapt into her throat. "It's okay," she said softly, lowering her voice, remembering what they taught in trauma response. "You're safe now. We're here." The girl trembled, her eyes darting from the officers to Hunter, who peered down, whining, nose twitching, as he sensed their pain. For a long moment, no one moved. The children flinched at every noise, every sudden shift. But as Hunter edged closer, the oldest girl finally whispered, We thought you'd never come." Emily slid into the cramped space, voice steady, movements gentle. "Let's get you out of there, sweethearts, one at a time." She reached out, and after a moment's hesitation, the children crawled into the open air. The oldest helped the smallest boy, his face streaked with tears and grime, his eyes so wide they seemed almost unblinking. Ramirez radioed for more units and an ambulance. Claire crouched beside the children, careful not to crowd them. She recognized one of the boys. His photo had been on every bulletin for weeks, missing from a town 30 miles away. The other girl matched the description of a runaway from Boulder. But the smallest, the silent boy, was a mystery. No alert, no missing persons flyer, no name anyone recognized. Emily wrapped the children in silver rescue blankets. "What are your names?" she asked gently. The oldest spoke, voice wavering. "I'm Sophie. This is Mia. That's Tyler and—" She glanced at the silent boy, who stared fixedly at Hunter. "Do you know his name?" Jamie asked, careful not to pressure her. Sophie shook her head, clutching Mia. "He never talks. We just called him Little One. He's been here longer than us, I think." Hunter, sensing the children's terror, lay down at their feet and offered a tentative lick to Mia's hand. The girl managed the faintest smile. The silent boy reached out, hesitated, then buried his face in Hunter's fur, clinging to the dog as if he were the last solid thing in the world. Claire felt tears sting her eyes. She watched as the boy pressed his cheek to Hunter's neck. The bond was instant, primal, an anchor in the middle of chaos. Ramirez, meanwhile, was already on his phone, voice clipped and formal. No press, no media circus. We keep this locked down until we know what we're dealing with. His gaze flicked to Claire, a silent challenge. But Claire shook her head. No, she said, voice trembling but clear. People need to know. These kids deserve to be seen. Someone out there is missing them. She looked at Sophie, who nodded, hope flickering behind her exhaustion. Hunter stayed with the children as paramedics checked them over. The silent boy finally looked up, and for the first time since they'd found him, opened his mouth. His voice was ragged, almost unused. Dog, he whispered, reaching for Hunter again. Claire smiled, relief mixing with sorrow. Hunter had done what no human could. He'd found them, brought them out of the darkness, and now he was their protector. The barn creaked as the storm began to fade, the morning sun breaking through gray clouds. Officers worked to secure the scene, marking off the makeshift cell, bagging scraps of clothing and broken toys as evidence. But for Claire, the world had narrowed to the 4 children huddled together under thin blankets. Hunter curled beside them like a living shield. She promised herself, then and there, that no one would ever push these kids back into the shadows, not while she and Hunter were still standing. The ambulance wove through the small town streets, headlights cutting through puddles as dawn's gray light brightened Maple Ridge. Inside, the 4 children sat bundled in hospital blankets, each one shell-shocked, barely speaking. Hunter sprawled at their feet, his huge body curled protectively around the youngest boy, who still hadn't let go of the dog's fur since the barn. Claire rode up front, silent, her mind racing as the world outside shifted from night to day. When they arrived at Maple Ridge Community Hospital, a team of doctors and social workers was waiting. Claire slipped into the background, watching as the professionals took over, voices soft, movements practiced, trying not to startle the children. They were led to a quiet pediatric ward where the harsh lights and the sharp tang of disinfectant seemed to amplify the children's fear. Sophie, the oldest, flinched at every door that closed too loudly. Mia and Tyler pressed together on a single bed, refusing to let go of each other's hands. But it was the smallest boy who haunted Claire. He wouldn't speak, not even his name, and wouldn't let anyone touch him but Hunter. The staff tried coaxing him with crackers, juice, warm words, but he only stared, wide-eyed, his tiny fists knotted in Hunter's fur. The nurses eyed Hunter uncertainly. Hospital rules rarely made room for animals in the ward, but the children's panic without him was so immediate and sharp that Dr. Patel, the head pediatrician, shrugged and let him stay. "Let the dog work his magic," she said quietly. "We'll make an exception this time." For hours, the hospital was a hive of activity. Blood work, X-rays, forensic teams moving quietly to collect evidence. Claire found herself sitting in the waiting room, numb and exhausted. Through the window, she watched the morning news vans roll up, camera crews jostling with microphones, the air electric with rumors of a miracle and something much darker. Her supervisor, Captain Evans, cornered her in the hall. "You went public," he said, not quite a question. "You realize what you've started." Claire straightened, fatigue burning in her bones. "They need the world to know they're safe," she replied, "and someone needs to recognize that boy. No one has any record of him." It's like he just appeared. Evans sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. There'll be blowback. We'll deal with it. Good work, Claire. But get some rest. Your dog, too. She returned to the ward, finding Sophie sitting upright in bed, clutching a juice box, her gaze darting between Hunter and the nurses. When she saw Claire, she relaxed just enough to speak. "Can Hunter stay?" she asked quietly, her voice trembling. "Just for a while." Claire glanced at Dr. Patel, who smiled. "I'll make sure of it. That dog's a hero." Sophie's lips curled into the faintest smile, a real smile, not just a reflex, and for the first time she looked less like a lost soul and more like a child. News of the rescue spread fast. By noon, headlines flashed on TV screens across Colorado. 4 children found alive in abandoned barn. The reporters pressed for details, but police held back the names, trying to protect the fragile children from the onslaught of curiosity and speculation. Only a single photo made the rounds, a grainy shot of Claire, mud-streaked and pale, leading the children into the ambulance, Hunter at their side like a sentinel. Inside the hospital, social workers pieced together the puzzle. Sophie and Mia were sisters, missing from their foster home weeks ago. Tyler's mother arrived in tears, hugging him as though she'd never let go. But the silent boy, the one the police had dubbed Noah for the time being, remained a mystery. No missing child's report matched his face or the small scar on his wrist. No one had come forward. No one claimed him. At dusk, Claire found herself at Noah's bedside. He lay curled with Hunter, his tiny hand rising and falling with each breath the dog took. Claire sat beside them, uncertain what to say. She tried anyway. "You're safe now," she said softly. "I promise." Noah didn't answer. Instead, he sat up slowly, reached for Claire's hand, and pressed it gently against Hunter's back. For a moment, she saw the world through his eyes, every adult a threat, every shadow dangerous, until Hunter arrived, strong and patient, unafraid. That evening, Sophie, her voice barely above a whisper, asked, "Will Hunter come back tomorrow?" Claire smiled, heart aching with relief. "Every day, if you want." As the hours passed, the police pieced together what little they could. The barn's owner was long dead. Neighbors had dismissed the abandoned property as a hangout for teenagers and coyotes. Yet for weeks, children had been trapped beneath the floor, surviving on rainwater and whatever scraps their captor had left behind. In the hallway, Evans handed Claire a stack of paperwork, his voice gruff, but his eyes kind. "You did good, Mitchell. The whole town's talking about you and that mutt." Claire shook her head. "Hunter's the hero, not me." Evans grinned. "He's got more medals than you at this point. Maybe give him a day off?" She laughed, the sound sharp and sudden, shattering some of the tension she'd carried since the storm. When she returned to the ward, she found Hunter lying between 2 beds, Noah's head on his shoulder, Sophie whispering to him, as if confessing secrets. The other children slept at last, faces peaceful for the first time in weeks. For that one quiet night, the horrors of the barn felt far away, washed clean by the storm and the unwavering presence of a good dog. But Claire knew darkness had a long reach, and the real work of healing had only just begun. Rain lingered in the air as days passed, the storm now only a memory for Maple Ridge. But inside the hospital, the trauma of what had happened in the barn hung over the pediatric ward like a fog. Claire made it a point to visit every day, sometimes with coffee in hand, sometimes with nothing but a tired smile and Hunter at her side. The children had become a quiet orbit around the dog. Mia drew pictures of him on the hospital paper. Tyler would sneak him half of his toast, and Sophie always looked for Hunter before she dared speak to any adult. But it was Noah who stayed closest. He rarely spoke, sometimes not at all for an entire day, and would startle violently at even soft sounds. Nurses learned to warn him gently before changing sheets or drawing blood. He slept fitfully, plagued by nightmares that woke the whole ward. Only Hunter could calm him. More than once, Claire woke in the visitor's chair to find Noah curled at Hunter's side, the dog's chin resting on the boy's shoulder, breathing slow and deep. Dr. Patel approached Claire one morning, her face lined with concern and fatigue. "He needs more than medicine," she said, glancing through the glass at Noah, who clung to Hunter like a lifeline. "He needs stability, routine, trust. If you're willing, we'd like to certify Hunter as a therapy dog, officially." Claire nodded. "If it helps him, we'll do whatever's needed." Word spread quickly. By the end of the week, Hunter had his vest, a bright blue patch declaring him a certified therapy dog. Hospital staff bent the rules to allow him everywhere Noah went. Sophie, emboldened by Hunter's presence, finally began to open up. She told detectives about the man who had locked them beneath the barn, describing his face, his voice, the way he'd vanished days before Hunter and Claire arrived. Forensics confirmed the worst. The children's abductor had died alone in a car accident weeks earlier, leaving the four to fend for themselves, unseen, unheard, nearly forgotten. The revelation hit the hospital staff hard. No one could explain how the kids survived as long as they did. Hunter's insistence, his refusal to leave the barn, had given them their only chance. Noah's nightmares changed after that. He still woke crying, but instead of silence, he sobbed out loud, clinging to Hunter for comfort. Sometimes Claire sat beside him in the night, feeling utterly helpless as he shook and wept. Other times, Sophie climbed into his bed and wrapped her arms around him until he calmed. The bond between them grew deeper each day, a kind of unspoken pact that no one would be left behind again. One afternoon, as autumn light filled the ward, Sophie drew a picture of Hunter and handed it to Claire. "Can he come home with us?" she whispered, hope shining in her eyes for the first time. Mia nodded eagerly. Tyler smiled. But it was Noah, who for days had refused to speak, who reached out and traced the dog's name on the drawing with his finger. It was a slow recovery. Therapy sessions were painful but necessary. The children were gentle with each other, never raising their voices, always checking before touching. Social workers visited, trying to untangle their family histories, struggling to find next of kin. Sophie and Maya's aunt came from Wyoming and hugged them until they nearly disappeared in her arms. Tyler's mother, who hadn't slept in weeks, promised him a new puppy of his own someday. But Noah remained a mystery. No paperwork, no school records, no family searching for him. He clung to Hunter and, surprisingly, to Claire. Sometimes, when he was certain no one else was listening, he'd call her Captain in a small, hopeful voice, a private name for the woman who had brought him into the light. One evening, as Claire was preparing to leave, she paused at the doorway, watching Noah and Hunter together. The boy sat quietly, his hand resting on Hunter's head, eyes focused but far away. Claire felt a surge of emotion, fierce, protective, and terrified. She'd seen trauma before, but never this kind of silent, stubborn resilience. She sat beside him, the chair creaking. "You know you're safe here, right?" she asked softly. Noah nodded, but his grip on Hunter tightened. Claire hesitated, then reached over and laid her hand atop his. For a moment, he didn't move. Then finally, he looked at her, eyes shining with unshed tears. "Thank you, Captain," he whispered, voice trembling but clear. Hunter shifted, pressing closer to both of them, his tail thumping softly against the side of the bed. Claire smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. She squeezed Noah's hand, feeling the beginning of something she couldn't quite name, a fragile hope, a promise that things might one day be okay. The days grew shorter, the leaves outside turned gold, and bit by bit, the children learned to smile again. Hunter's presence, constant and patient, was the glue holding them together, giving them courage to face each day. And though wounds remained, deep, invisible, aching, they began to heal little by little, in the safety of the hospital, and in the light that one dog, one determined officer, and one small act of trust had brought back into their lives. 2 weeks after the rescue, the hospital room felt less like a prison and more like a second home. Hunter had become a fixture in the ward, weaving between beds, his tail wagging softly, ever watchful for any sign of distress. The children, Sophie, Mia, and Tyler, were gradually reuniting with family, their futures slowly coming into focus. But for Noah, every day brought a new layer of uncertainty. Claire was at the nurse's station signing paperwork when Linda Cho, the county child welfare supervisor, approached her with a cautious smile. "Claire, can I speak with you in private?" Her tone was gentle, but Claire recognized the undercurrent of urgency. They stepped into a quiet conference room overlooking the parking lot, the silence inside thick with unspoken questions. Linda wasted no time. "Noah's case is complicated. With no family, no record, he'll likely be transferred to foster care soon. But he's not responding to anyone, except you and Hunter." She hesitated, glancing down at the manila folder in her hands. "He hasn't slept unless Hunter is there. I know this is sudden, but would you consider being his foster parent? At least temporarily, until we can figure out more about his background." Claire froze. The idea was overwhelming. Her mind spun through every reason she should say no. Her unpredictable hours, the trauma she carried from years on the force, her lack of experience with children. But the image of Noah's small form curled against Hunter, sleeping peacefully for the first time since his rescue, refused to leave her mind. She pressed her lips together, fighting back doubt. I don't know if I'm the right person," Claire admitted quietly. "He deserves someone with a family, a real home." Linda gave her a knowing look. "He needs stability, Claire. Right now, you and Hunter are his home. Just think about it." And that night, Claire drove home with Hunter in the passenger seat. Her thoughts knotted tight. She barely slept, pacing her small living room, replaying every moment since that stormy morning. She remembered Noah's terrified eyes, his trembling hands, the way he'd called her captain with a mix of hope and fear. She tried to imagine him sleeping alone in a strange house, waking to nightmares without Hunter's reassuring warmth. The thought twisted her gut. By sunrise, her mind was made up. She called Linda and said yes. The transition was awkward and fragile. Noah clung to Hunter as Claire buckled him into the back seat of her car, his gaze darting between the unfamiliar world outside and the one constant in his life. At home, he hesitated on the doorstep, his small hands clutching Hunter's leash like a lifeline. Claire did her best to make the house feel welcoming. She set up a soft bed for Hunter in Noah's room and filled the shelves with books and toys donated by neighbors and local charities. She cooked simple meals, grilled cheese sandwiches, soup, pancakes shaped like animals. But most nights, Noah barely picked at his food, retreating to his room as soon as he could. The first night was the hardest. Noah refused to let Claire turn off the light. He lay in bed with Hunter pressed against his side, eyes wide open, waiting for the darkness to swallow him up again. Claire sat in the hallway, door cracked open, listening for any sign of distress. Around midnight, she heard muffled sobs. She crept in, found Noah huddled under his blanket, Hunter's head resting on his chest. She knelt beside the bed, unsure what to say. "You're safe here, Noah," she whispered. "Hunter and we're not going anywhere, I promise." For a long time, he didn't answer. Then, in a voice so soft she almost missed it, he whispered, "Don't leave." "I won't," Claire replied, her heart aching. She stayed until he fell asleep, the tension in his body finally easing. Over the next few days, Claire learned how to read the subtle signs of Noah's fear, how he flinched at unexpected noises, how he avoided mirrors, how he'd freeze whenever the phone rang. He still barely spoke, communicating mostly through gestures and drawings. On the third night, he left a picture on Claire's desk, a simple sketch of himself, Hunter, and a woman in a police uniform. Above their heads, he'd drawn a heart. The next morning, Claire found Noah sitting at the kitchen table, Hunter's head in his lap. Without a word, he pushed the drawing toward her, then looked away, face flushed with embarrassment. Claire smiled, tears pricking her eyes as she knelt down beside him. "Is this your family?" she asked softly. Noah nodded, staring at the floor. Hunter licked his hand, tail thumping quietly. Claire wrapped her arms around Noah, careful and gentle, unsure if he'd accept the gesture. To her surprise, he leaned into her, letting his head rest on her shoulder for just a moment before pulling away. From that day forward, a tentative peace settled in the house. Each night, Noah slept curled against Hunter, the nightmares less frequent, the crying softer. Claire kept her promise, always nearby, always patient. She didn't know what the future would hold or whether Noah would ever find his real family. But for now, they were enough for each other. And in the quiet moments, over breakfast, during a walk in the park, as Hunter played in the backyard, Claire realized that sometimes the most fragile beginnings held the strongest hope. Autumn in Maple Ridge painted the world gold and crimson, but for Noah, each morning still felt uncertain, a test of courage just to get out of bed. Claire did her best to keep routines gentle, pancakes for breakfast, quiet walks to the park, evenings reading together on the worn old couch while Hunter sprawled at their feet. It was new for both of them. Claire had spent her whole adult life behind the badge, on the move, always braced for the next emergency. Now, she found herself learning the delicate art of packing school lunches, coaxing a wary child to try shoes, checking the clock for bus pickups. Every tiny victory. Noah brushing his teeth without prompting. Noah asking for seconds at dinner. Noah smiling when Hunter nuzzled his ear. Felt like a miracle. School was the next hurdle. On the first day, Noah clung to Hunter's collar, eyes huge and anxious as they walked into the bright, echoing hallway. The principal, Mrs. Jensen, met them with a smile and bent down so she wouldn't tower over Noah. "You must be Noah," she said, her voice soft but confident. "We're so glad you're here. And who's this handsome fellow?" Noah didn't answer, but Hunter licked her hand, tail wagging, and some of the tension left Noah's shoulders. Claire had already explained Hunter's role to the administration. He was now a fully certified therapy dog, allowed to accompany Noah wherever he went. Some parents complained, but most of the kids were enchanted. They greeted Hunter in the hallways, offered him treats, and soon a trail of children began shadowing them at recess, eager for a chance to throw a tennis ball or scratch behind his ears. Noah's teacher, Mr. Kincaid, watched quietly at first, careful not to overwhelm. He set aside a desk for Noah and Hunter at the back of the room and checked in often, never pushing, always patient. Even so, Noah struggled. Words seemed to get stuck in his throat. His pencil trembled in his hand, and he flinched at sudden shouts or the scrape of chairs. Some days, he hid under the desk until Hunter nudged him out, warm and steady and reassuring. But as the weeks passed, small changes bloomed. One sunny afternoon, Noah surprised everyone by joining a group for kickball, Hunter trotting at his side, barking encouragement. Another day, during art class, he painted a field with a house and 3 figures, himself, Hunter, and a woman in blue. "That's us," he told Mr. Kincaid in a shy voice. The teacher beamed and pinned the painting to the wall. The biggest breakthrough came on a Friday after lunch. Recess was in full swing, the playground filled with laughter and squeals. Noah, clutching a faded tennis ball, stood near the edge, uncertain. Hunter sat beside him, tail sweeping the grass. Claire had stopped by the school to drop off paperwork and watched from a distance, nerves tight. Without warning, Noah threw the ball. Hunter dashed after it, barking joyfully, and a ripple of laughter followed as a group of kids joined in, cheering. Noah grinned, a wide, real grin, and laughed out loud for the first time anyone could remember. Claire blinked away tears. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that healing might really be possible. But life never stayed simple for long. One afternoon, as Claire picked up Noah from school, the guidance counselor, Miss Torres, waved her down. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked, her face kind but troubled. Inside her office, Miss Torres shut the door and knelt beside Noah, who perched on the edge of a chair, Hunter at his feet. "Noah, can I see your arm?" she asked gently. He hesitated, then rolled up his sleeve, revealing a thin scar near his elbow, almost invisible but unmistakably old. Miss Torres looked at Claire. "That scar matches a detail in a missing persons case from 3 years ago. A little boy, age 4, disappeared from a foster home in Denver. The record was never matched because the paperwork was a mess. The boy's name was listed as Eli, not Noah." Claire's heart thudded. She crouched beside Noah, her voice soft. "Noah, do you remember anything about before? Anything about a different name or another place?" Noah shook his head, shrinking inward, fear flickering in his eyes. Hunter pressed against his legs, grounding him. Miss Torres nodded, not pushing further. "We'll check with the caseworker," she promised. "You're safe no matter what." That evening, after dinner, Claire sat with Noah and Hunter at the kitchen table, a stack of old coloring books and battered photo albums between them. "Do you want to look for clues?" she asked. Noah hesitated, then nodded, curiosity kindling in his gaze. They went through every scrap of memory Noah could offer. A playground with a red slide, a woman with a blue scarf, the smell of oranges. Claire wrote each detail on a notepad, determined to uncover the truth. As the sun set, Noah grew tired, resting his head on Hunter's side. "Why do I have 2 names?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Claire brushed his hair from his forehead. "Sometimes people give us new names when they can't find the old ones. But whatever your name is, you're still you, and you're home now." Noah nodded, and for the first time he wrapped his arms around Claire's waist, hugging her fiercely. Hunter barked softly, as if approving. It was a start, a fragile, hopeful step toward trust and the possibility of a real family. And as autumn deepened around their little house, Claire promised herself she'd do whatever it took to help Noah find his way back to the life he'd lost, and forward into the one he was building with her and Hunter. By late October, the first frost glazed the fields around Maple Ridge, and with each sunrise the world felt a little sharper, the shadows deeper, At home, Claire saw changes in Noah. Some days he'd hum softly while drawing. Other times he'd go silent, staring into the distance, questions clouding his eyes. Hunter seemed to sense these shifts, never far from Noah's side, head resting on the boy's knee, eyes alert to any sign of distress. The investigation into Noah's identity had picked up speed. Miss Torres worked with detectives and social services, digging through old case files, foster home reports, and any possible connections to the thin scar on Noah's arm. Some documents had gone missing, lost in years of bureaucracy and staff turnover. Others were simply gone, signed out from county archives and never returned. Claire grew more uneasy with each update, feeling the cold fingers of some hidden threat inching closer to their fragile new life. One gray afternoon, Claire's phone rang as she left work. The number was blocked. She answered, expecting another agency update. But the voice on the other end was low and unfamiliar, crackling through static. "Drop the case, Officer Mitchell. For your sake, and the boys. Leave it alone." Claire's grip tightened on the steering wheel, her pulse thundering in her ears. "Who is this?" A click, then nothing but a deadline. Claire stared at the phone, a chill crawling up her spine. She glanced at Hunter in the rearview mirror, and as if sensing her anxiety, the dog shifted, ears pricked, tail still. That night, she checked the locks 3 times before bed. Her mind racing with possibilities, she tried to hide her tension, but Noah watched her with wide, worried eyes. At bedtime, as Hunter curled up between them, Claire smoothed Noah's hair and forced a smile. "Everything's okay, kiddo, I promise." Noah studied her face for a long time. "You're scared," he whispered, not as a question, but a quiet truth. Claire took a shaky breath and hugged him. "Maybe a little, but I'm here. Hunter's here. Nothing's going to happen to you." But the sense of unease grew. 2 days later, Linda Cho from Child Welfare called. "Claire, someone broke into the county records office last night. Adoption files and foster home reports were stolen, Noah's included. We've notified the police, but this isn't normal. Be careful." Fear gripped Claire, hard and cold. Someone didn't want the truth about Noah coming out. Someone was willing to break the law to keep his past hidden. Meanwhile, Noah himself was changing. Instead of retreating from the questions, he started asking his own. At breakfast, he pushed aside his cereal and looked at Claire, voice trembling but determined. "Am I ever going to find out who I am, where I'm from?" Claire hesitated. She'd always promised him honesty. "We're trying, Noah, but sometimes people hide things because they're scared too. We just have to keep looking." Noah nodded, setting his jaw in a way that reminded Claire of herself. Stubborn, a little bit defiant. "I want to know, even if it's scary." That afternoon, the mail brought a battered envelope with no return address. Inside was a faded photograph, an old Polaroid of a woman holding a baby. Written across the bottom, in shaky handwriting, were 3 words. "Don't forget me." Claire's heart hammered as she studied the image. The baby's eyes were unmistakable. Noah's eyes, bright and wide, clinging to the woman's shirt. She showed it to Noah, who stared for a long time, his hand trembling as he traced the photo with his finger. "Is that me?" he whispered. "I think so," Claire replied, her own voice thick. "Do you remember her?" Noah shook his head, but the picture became his new treasure. He carried it everywhere, pulling it from his pocket and smoothing the corners whenever he grew anxious or lost. For days, he barely spoke, lost in thought. Claire reached out to the detective assigned to Noah's case, forwarding the photo and details of the anonymous call. She pressed the department to double-check every old lead, to re-interview anyone connected to Noah's original foster home. The feeling of being watched never left her. One evening, after Hunter finished his dinner and settled at Noah's feet, Claire sat beside her foster son on the living room floor. "Noah, do you know why someone might not want us to find your past?" she asked gently. Noah thought for a long time. "Maybe. They're scared I'll remember something bad. Or maybe someone lost me on purpose." Claire felt her chest tighten. She wished she could promise him it would all make sense soon, but there were too many missing pieces, too many people willing to keep secrets. "Whatever happens, I'm not giving up on you," she said, her voice fierce. Noah finally looked her in the eye. "Me neither. I want to know who I am, even if it hurts." Hunter, sensing the gravity of the moment, nudged Noah's hand with his nose, and Noah hugged him tightly, holding on as if the world might try to take him away again. That night, Claire sat by the window as Noah slept, Hunter's steady breathing filling the small house with a kind of hope. She watched the stars glint through the cold glass, silently vowing that she'd fight, no matter who tried to stop her, for the boy who had come to mean everything, and for the truth that might finally set him free. By the first week of November, Maple Ridge seemed to hold its breath. Word of the break-in at the county records office and the mysterious photo had swept through town like wildfire. People speculated in coffee shops and over fences, their curiosity mixing with concern for Noah and for Claire, the officer who had risked everything to bring 4 children out of the dark. Claire barely slept. Every phone call from the department sent her heart racing, and every strange car parked near her house made her hands itch for her service weapon. She doubled down on security, new locks, a camera over the porch, and the silent promise that she and Hunter would keep Noah safe no matter what. But even as fear pressed in, she felt something else rising, a surge of determination. Not just in herself, but in the town. That Friday, the mayor called a special meeting at the old community center. The room was packed. Teachers, business owners, farm hands in muddy boots, parents clutching their children's hands. Local press crowded in the back, cameras ready. Claire arrived with Noah on one side and Hunter on the other, feeling every pair of eyes follow them as they walked to the front. Linda Cho from Child Welfare and Miss Torres from the school were there too, nodding support. The mayor cleared his throat, looking somber. "We're here because our community has faced something no town should. A crime that nearly cost us our children, and a secret that's haunted us for years. Officer Mitchell, would you please share what you know?" Claire stood, feeling her knees tremble. She squeezed Noah's hand, then stepped to the microphone. The silence was immense. "I wish I could tell you we have all the answers," Claire began, her voice clear and strong. "But what we know is that for years, children like Noah slipped through the cracks. Someone tried to erase his history, stole records, threatened our family, and tried to make sure the truth never came out." A wave of murmurs swept through the crowd. Claire continued, holding up the faded photograph. "This is the only clue we have, a picture of Noah as a baby with his mother. Until recently, we believed she was gone. But I'm here to tell you, that's not the case." Detective Hart, standing at the edge of the stage, stepped forward. "With help from Claire, social services, and some very determined people in this room, we found Noah's biological mother. Her name is Sarah. She's alive, but she's struggled with addiction and has been in and out of treatment centers for years. She lost track of Noah in the system after a bad foster placement and a bureaucratic nightmare that should never have happened." A collective gasp echoed through the hall. At the back, a woman rose slowly, clutching a crumpled tissue in her shaking hand. Her hair was tangled, her face drawn but familiar. She was the woman from the photograph. Noah stared, wide-eyed. Claire knelt and spoke softly. "That's your mom, Noah. She didn't forget you. She just needed help finding her way back." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she stepped forward, voice trembling. "I tried. I called, wrote letters. No one would listen. I thought he was gone forever." The room grew quiet as Noah, guided by Claire and Hunter, walked toward his mother. He hesitated, then reached out, and Sarah collapsed into sobs, clutching him as if afraid he might vanish. For the first time since the barn, Noah wept openly, his tears not of fear but of release. Grief and hope tangled together. Hunter, sensing the emotional swell, nudged them both, tail wagging. The crowd erupted in applause, some people crying openly, others shouting support. Detective Hart cleared his throat. "The person responsible for keeping Noah hidden is under investigation. The barn will be torn down and the property donated for something new, a safe place for kids, run by people who care." The mayor nodded. "We want to build a children's center in Maple Ridge, led by Officer Mitchell. No more lost records, no more secrets. A place where every kid is known, where every voice is heard." The town rallied around the idea. People volunteered supplies, local builders drew up plans, and a fundraiser was set for the following weekend. In the days that followed, Hunter became a local celebrity. Kids painted murals of him on the rec center walls, and the town council voted to make him the honorary guardian of Maple Ridge, a symbol of the loyalty and courage that had saved 4 children's lives. As for Sarah, she began her recovery in earnest, moving into a halfway house near the new center and attending counseling with Noah. Their relationship was slow and awkward at first. Tentative hellos, quiet tears, shy hugs. But it was a beginning. The story spread beyond Maple Ridge, inspiring donations and volunteers from across the state. Reporters came for interviews, but Claire refused any that didn't focus on the children, on Hunter, or on the need for systemic change. "This isn't about me," she told them. "It's about believing in the people and the dogs who refuse to give up." One chilly morning, as demolition crews tore down the old barn, the entire town gathered to watch. Noah clung to Hunter's neck, his eyes fixed on the spot where his world had once ended, and then begun again. Claire stood behind him, hand on his shoulder, heart bursting with pride and gratitude. As the final wall fell, the crowd cheered. For the first time, Maple Ridge felt like a place where healing could truly begin, a place where secrets came into the light, where children found their way home, and where a single act of courage could change everything. Winter had come to Maple Ridge, frosting the trees and casting long blue shadows across the snow. The old barn was gone now, just a flat stretch of earth waiting for something better. In its place, the framework of the new Maple Ridge Children's Center was rising, beams and fresh walls bright against the pale sky. Every day brought volunteers, retirees, teenagers, tradesmen, parents, bundled against the cold and determined to build a place where no child would ever be forgotten again. The town dedicated the Children's Center on a Saturday in December, when the air sparkled and the scent of hot cocoa drifted through the doors. The crowd filled the big hall, old-timers who remembered the barn's dark history, kids in mismatched mittens, and families from neighboring towns who'd followed the story and come to show their support. A new mural stretched along one wall, Hunter, tail up, nose to the wind, surrounded by the faces of laughing children. Near the front, a bronze plaque gleamed, etched with the words, "To those who never gave up, Claire stood beside Noah, both of them fidgeting with nerves. Sarah, Noah's mother, sat nearby, hands clasped tightly in her lap, her expression a mixture of awe and disbelief. Linda Cho was there, beaming with pride, and Miss Torres, the school counselor, wiped her eyes behind thick glasses. As the mayor welcomed everyone, the hush in the room grew. He gestured for Claire to come forward. She hesitated, feeling all eyes on her. But Noah squeezed her hand, steady and warm, and she found her courage. Claire stepped to the podium, voice clear and steady despite the lump in her throat. "Thank you," she began, searching the faces before her. "When this started, I thought the bravest thing I'd ever done was follow Hunter into that barn. But I was wrong. The real courage came after, day by day, as we all learned what it meant to heal, to trust, to believe in each other again." She looked down at Hunter, who lay at Noah's feet, head on his paws, eyes bright with quiet loyalty. "I've seen heroism in many forms: badges, uniforms, everyday people doing what needs to be done. But sometimes, heroism is quiet. It's a child asking for help. It's a town refusing to turn away. And sometimes, it wears fur and greets you with a wagging tail when you think you can't go on." The audience laughed softly, a ripple of warmth in the cold hall. Claire continued, "We built this center because healing is never a solitary journey. It takes a web of trust, of small, stubborn acts of love. A friend staying up through nightmares, a dog refusing to give up, a neighbor who listens instead of judging. Sometimes, the most broken are the ones who change us the most." Her voice grew softer, more reflective. "If we've learned anything, it's that healing doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means honoring it, growing from it, and vowing not to let it happen again. And it means promising to listen, to the children, to each other, and to the animals who seem to know what we need before we even say it." She stepped aside, motioning for Noah to join her. He hesitated, then took a deep breath, standing tall beside her as she placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. The audience grew silent. With Claire's quiet encouragement, Noah spoke into the microphone, his voice trembling but determined. "Thank you for not forgetting me," he began, eyes shining with emotion. "Thank you to everyone who helped, even when you were scared. Thank you for Hunter. He's my best friend. And thank you for giving us a place to be safe, to not be alone." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. People wept openly, holding hands, hugging strangers. Even the mayor wiped away a tear. The lesson of the last months was clear to everyone. The cost of silence is too high, but the reward of courage is immeasurable. After the speeches, the community mingled, filling the center with laughter and stories. Children raced down the hallways, their shouts echoing, their energy a sign of a future bright with hope. Sarah joined Noah and Claire by the mural, her smile tentative but real. She hugged Noah fiercely, whispering, "I'm so proud of you," over and over, until he giggled and pulled her into the sunlight streaming through the windows. Hunter basked in attention, a hero in his own right. He wore a shiny blue collar with a gold tag that read, "Maple Ridge Guardian." Kids crowded around him, petting his head and taking turns reading him their favorite books. As dusk fell and families drifted home, Claire lingered by the door, looking back at the lively, golden-lit center. She knew there would be challenges ahead. Noah's journey, and Sarah's, was far from over. But in that moment, she felt the full strength of the town behind her, a community made stronger by its refusal to ignore suffering or stay silent when it mattered most. She knelt beside Hunter, scratching his chin as he leaned into her hand. "We did good, buddy," she murmured. "We did real good." And Hunter, as if he understood every word, wagged his tail, ready for whatever came next, a reminder that healing, like courage, is built from the smallest, everyday acts of love, repeated until they become a new way of life. A year passed in Maple Ridge, and with the changing seasons, new life blossomed from old wounds. Where the barn once stood, an empty place of fear, now rose the Maple Ridge Children's Center, alive with the sounds of laughter, running feet, and the chatter of kids discovering that the world could be safe, after all. On a bright spring morning, sunlight poured through the big windows, splashing across freshly painted walls, adorned with drawings, handprints, and stories from every child who passed through the doors. Hunter was everywhere, his paw prints stamped in bright blue along the hallway, his smiling face on the welcome sign, and most importantly, his gentle presence beside the children who needed him most. He wore a soft red scarf these days, just like a superhero, the kids would say, and patrolled the center with quiet dignity, always stopping for a scratch behind the ears or to listen to a whispered secret. Noah, now officially adopted by Claire, was almost unrecognizable from the boy who'd been rescued a year ago. His eyes were brighter, his laugh easy, and he walked with a growing sense of confidence, though he still liked to keep a hand on Hunter's fur, just in case. The nightmares came less often now, and when they did, Noah knew that he could find safety in Claire's arms or by curling up beside Hunter, who never left his side. Sarah visited often, her recovery steady. She and Noah met for picnics in the garden behind the center, and with every visit, a little more trust bloomed between them. Sometimes Sarah would help read stories to the younger children. Other days, she volunteered in the kitchen, her hands busy and her heart full. The community supported her, understanding that healing was not a straight line but a path of second chances and forgiveness. Claire found herself busier than ever, running the center, managing a team of counselors and volunteers, and of course parenting a child who still carried invisible scars. But she wouldn't have traded a single exhausting minute for her old life. There was a sense of purpose now, woven into each day, a steady certainty that this was what she was meant to do. The highlight of the year came at the center's anniversary celebration. The whole town turned out, neighbors, friends, teachers, and children, some of whom traveled from across the state just to see the place that had become a symbol of hope. A bronze statue of Hunter, carved by a local artist, stood at the entrance, a reminder of the night everything changed. The community held a candlelight vigil that evening, filling the yard with a gentle golden glow. As the sky darkened, Claire took the stage, Noah and Hunter on either side. She glanced down at her son, smiling as he squeezed her hand. The crowd quieted, waiting. "I used to think courage was just a moment, a single act, a flash of bravery when you needed it most," Claire began. "But this year I learned something different. Real courage is showing up again and again, even when you're tired or scared. It's refusing to look away when someone's in pain. It's trusting that together we can build something beautiful out of broken pieces." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the familiar faces. Sarah, Linda, Miss Torres. Dozens of children and families who had walked through fire and come out stronger on the other side. "We built this place because of a dog who wouldn't stop barking, a boy who wouldn't give up, and a town that chose to listen. Let's keep listening. To the children who haven't found their voice yet, to our neighbors who might need help, and to the quiet heroes among us, whether they wear a badge, a scarf, or just a wagging tail." The crowd murmured their agreement, candles flickering in the twilight. Noah stepped forward, his voice clear. "Thank you for making a family for me and for Hunter. Thank you for making this our home." Sarah wiped away tears, beaming with pride. Someone started to clap, and soon the whole crowd was cheering, their voices rising like a promise into the spring night. After the ceremony, people lingered in the yard, sharing memories and hopes for the future. Kids took turns hugging Hunter, who accepted every pat with patient grace. Claire and Noah sat together on the steps, watching the candles burn down, the stars bright overhead. "Do you think the hurt ever really goes away?" Noah asked quietly, his fingers twining with Hunter's fur. Claire put her arm around his shoulders. "I think it changes," she said. "We learn to carry it together, so it gets lighter. And the love we build is bigger than anything that tried to break us." Noah nodded, thoughtful. "I'm glad you found me." Claire kissed the top of his head. "I'm glad Hunter found you. And I'm even gladder that you let us love you." They sat in silence, Hunter's head resting across both their knees, the past no longer something to run from, but a story that made the present more precious. As the last candle flickered out, Claire rose to address the crowd one final time. "Let's promise to keep showing up for each other. Listen to the voiceless. Trust your instincts. Remember, a single act of courage from any one of us can change a life forever." The crowd nodded, the message sinking deep. That night, as Claire, Noah, and Hunter walked home beneath the starlit sky, hope pulsed through Maple Ridge. Hope born from darkness, grown through kindness, and carried forward by every hand, every heart, and every wagging tail that chose every day not to give up.